So let's go to the masterclass. As I said before, the masterclass is focused on the first part of our methodology, which is the general description and the introduction to how to establish which are the tools, which are the resources, which are the overall or general requirements that we have to face to be ready to productively and effectively manage a contract. The first thing is to give a short list of key messages, of key points about contract management, which relates to the main problems that we have been seeing and the defects. I guess that some of you are familiar about the paper that we did for Inter-American Development Bank. You can download that paper. It's available in English and Spanish and Portuguese in the website of the World Bank, in the repository of documents of the World Bank. Is a paper analyzing the foundations of contract management and analyzing the main defects and problems that can be detected in the one particular region, which is Latin America. And this is coming from there, no? From that analysis. Which are the main defects, pitfalls, and things that should be improved? The first problem is a lack of awareness. I mean, the lack of how big is the task and which is the relevance of the task. What is the role of contract management and what is the magnitude of the task? People tend to say not give the value that they should give to this task. The contract management is much more than monitoring the contractual obligations or controlling the performance or the contract breaches. We will develop this idea later on. Also, coming from this lack of awareness about the relevance, and people, I mean, mostly the governments, don't realize that requires a lot of planning, a lot of preparation. From preparation, I mean, from the very beginning of the preparation of the project, in the appraisal phase, when we are dealing with feasibility, contract management should be already on the table. It should allow us to this should allow us to visualize what are the resources that we need, which is the estimate of the funds that we will need, which is the estimate of the costs to match those resources. And we need to incorporate that in the cost benefit analysis, in the value for money analysis, in the financial feasibility of the project. Also, related to lack of awareness is the idea that contract management is a complex matter, requires specific capabilities, pretty much related to project management, stakeholder management, but also obviously PPP expertise. And there are some specialities, some special capabilities, very focusing very specific issues, like the very contract itself. We are talking about financial, of course, and legal, but also environmental, also IT, technologies, and things like that. So another problem is lack of understanding of what is really a PPP. I mean, the lack of true understanding about what a PPP means. We saw particularly in the countries that we analyzed how frequent is to deal with the contract management of a PPP still under this traditional view, traditional engineering view, like if the contract or the project should be managed like a conventional or traditional contract, being very prescriptive. So being very prescriptive as well when monitoring the contract. No? And the reality is that the PPP contract is much more complex than a conventional contract. We have resharing, we have performance orientation. We should have or not have prescriptive description of means and methods. And because of that, it's more complicated to monitor, it's more complicated to manage. PPPs are also long-term contracts, and for sure will be subject to a lot of changes. We need to change, sorry, we need to manage changes. We will see later on what are the implications of change management. A third problem with respect to contract management is the defect in accountability. The problem is the detachment to the asset. Is this feeling that a project is, when doing a project as a PPP, it's like the project is not anymore our project. And that's a false impression, because in reality, no matter whether we are delegating most of the tasks to develop the project, the government is still responsible for them. It should be accountable with the society. It should be accountable for any mistake, any error, any problem with the project, including the lack of performance of the private party. In fact, in many cases, governments are dealing with PPPs as another type of investment, as if it not were a public investment. But a PPP is a public investment, as public as any conventional contract. Another matter is that there is financing that is private and subject to project risk. But the project is our project, and the investment is a public investment. And by the way, it should go through the same degree of scrutiny in terms of economic soundness and economic feasibility. A PPP project should be part of the public national investment system. And last problem out of these four big things, four big messages, is the problem of institutionalization. Contract management need to be institutionalized. No, any country today with a certain track record in PPPs, and this is good, has a PPP law or has guidelines for fiscal management, or have guidelines for value for money and things like that. However, it's very rare to see national guidelines on contract management. We need to dedicate a space in the framework and in the law and in the main guidelines of a country to institutionalize contract management by means of guidelines, strategy, approaches. And also it's important to recognize that contract management is not just the contracting authority who is going to be involved, but the full whole governance of the PPP system in a country. I mean, Ministry of Finance, planning agencies, and so on, should be involved and will be involved. And we need to incorporate in the contract management cycle, in the contract management processes, in an appropriate manner, all this upstream governance, the role of the central agencies, especially Ministry of Finance or Central PPP Unit. And also we need to institutionalize downstream. I mean, we should recognize a specific role, a specific profession, which is the contract management, the contract administrator. Okay, this is an overall picture of the methodology that we try to disseminate, and it has three levels, three layers. Again, we will go through some level of detail of this first layer, establishing strategy. When we are dealing with a specific project, we need to be sure about which is the governance framework. We need to design and establish a contract management team, the main resources, and we need to put in place an operational framework. I mean, the fundamental piece is contract. We will discuss about this later, but there is other tools and methodologies that we need to properly manage the contract. That is basically when we deal with establishing the strategy, and we will go to some level of detail in a couple of minutes. There is a second layer out of these three layers, which is the general activities. And we talk in our methodology about one set of activity, one group, one level of tasks, which is relationship management. We talk about the partnership management, managing the relationship with the private party, and managing the stakeholders. Another area of management, general management, if you wish. And when we talk about general management, is that it's not something that is directly reflected in the contract. There are activities that they don't have a direct implication in costs, in affordability, or in value for money, which is more the layer C, which is the material activities. So knowledge management. We need to manage knowledge. We need to manage the team in terms of people coming in, being ready and being trained in knowing the project. We need tools like a contract manual. We will discuss about this later on. We need to manage succession planning, to manage the hole that can be suddenly appearing when somebody relevant is moving from the government to the private sector or whatever. But this person had a lot of knowledge of the project. We need to manage that, the succession. This is related to managing information, collecting information, and managing documents, registering things that so they are accessible, knowledge management. Then we have a third area, which is risk management, risk control, and contingency planning. We will talk a little bit later on about this. And last, we have the reporting level, which could be considered as part of managing stakeholders in the sense of internal stakeholders, the upstream stakeholders, the internal government upstream stakeholders like Ministry of Finance, for example, and how a proper PPP framework should establish procedures for reporting upstream things like, for example, fiscal impact, monitoring how is evolving the project in terms of risk values and contingent liabilities and similar things. Okay, general activities are those that facilitate good management, providing tools and technologies. And then we have the material activities, the core, probably the more direct thing and more interesting, probably, not so theoretical. And in our approach, we have divided this in a number of models: change management, compliance monitoring and performance management, managing performance, which is obviously the fundamental thing, but it's not the only thing. Administering payments and other obligations of the procuring authority, because contract management is not only managing the performance of the private party, but also ensuring that we, as the government, as the procuring authority, as the owner of the project, manage properly our own obligations. There is another area of management, material management, which is managing claims, mostly claims coming from retained risks. And dispute management is the fifth one, managing disputes, starting from trying to avoid disputes, no? Okay, so this is the overall picture about the strategy map that we try to disseminate in contract management. This approach is pretty established or similar in a number of countries leading good practice. Particularly, our approaches and methodologies are based in Australia, particularly in the case of Victoria State, with Richard Foster being one of our partners and is one of the authors of the Contract Management Guide of Victoria.